We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings using our current teleconference process. If the meeting is recessed, callers will be put on hold until the meeting reconvenes, with the exception at noon where callers will be asked to call back in. This helps with call quality. Please note this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to please mute their devices to reduce disruptions to our meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Pardon me, if I could add my attendance at Potential Renewable Energy Inc. on August 13th.
Let's add that under 7.2. We'll make it 7.2B in your report A.
Thank you.
Any other additions or changes? Motion to approve the agenda with the amendment.
Also move.
Thank you, Deputy Rafe Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question.
I don't know what's going on here. Should just be coming up here. Come on, dude. Okay.
Thank you, Shanna. That motion is carried. Are there any notices of motion? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 3.1, Bylaw 2025-06, Fire and Emergency Services Bylaw, first reading.
Good morning, Council. Sherry Bars with Administration to present Bylaw 2025-06, the Fire and Emergency Services Bylaw for first reading, which is found on page 3 of your agenda package. Bylaw 2025-06 will replace Bylaw 2019-06. The current bylaw provides a foundation for fire operations, but lacks operational detail, regulatory authority, and enforcement clarity needed to meet today's service demands and align with best practices. This updated bylaw establishes a comprehensive framework for fire prevention, suppression, permits, cost recovery, mutual aid, and enforcement. It also aligns with current legislation under the MGA, Safety Codes Act, Emergency Management Act, and the Forest and Prairie Protection Act. Key improvements include broadening the scope to formally recognize all emergency response functions, reorganizing content for clarity with definitions and a dedicated schedule, clarity on the roles and lines of authority for fire chiefs and incident command, expanding enforcement, offenses, and cost recovery provisions, and updating terminology to reflect provincial legislation and best practices. If adopted, Bylaw 2025-06 will provide clearer guidance for residents, fire personnel, and administration, ensuring consistent, enforceable, and effective service delivery. Administration is recommending that council grant first reading of bylaw 2025-06. This first reading will allow council additional time to review the bylaw, provide any edits or amendments, and following this review, administration will incorporate council's feedback and bring the bylaw back for further readings. And beginning on page 4 of the agenda package, we have a table that will provide a comparison of the original 2019-06 bylaw and the 2025-06 bylaw. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for administration? Councillor Kester.
I move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2025-06 being the Fire and Emergency Services bylaw.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on first reading? Councillor LaPrice.
I was just wondering if I could get some clarity around the cost recovery section. So under offenses, failure to prevent running fires, and it says failing to take reasonable steps to prevent a fire from running. And then we could charge cost recovery if an incident results from contravention of this bylaw. So what would be reasonable prevention of running fire? So I'm just thinking combines out in the field and you start a fire and then it just gets away from you.
Through the chair to council. The offenses are still standard. We clarified. We have not to date done a penalty for that, but typically it's coordinated with a fire permit and that they didn't do what they were supposed to with using some of the containers, whether it's contained or not. You're correct, that wouldn't have been seen as there is a lot of discretion. Very rarely, even when hay bales have caught fire, have we seen that, and it caught to become a running fire, have we ever penalized someone for that?
And then just following that, there on 15.1.3, it says charges may also apply where, and the third point says fire protection services are delivered to an individual or property. Like, that's pretty broad. What does that really mean?
Yes, through the chair to council. We've only had this, I would say it is broad, but it's very rare that I can say from cost recovery on penalties, it's rare because depending on whether someone intentionally set a fire, it's pretty clear. But when it comes to accidental, we have not applied those penalties. We have this in place. There have been offenses where it's clear where the first time they're called out and it's something that could have been preventable, there's no charge. However, if it's a repeat offense, I can only think of once where we've applied because it was a blatant offense, and we try to use that very limited when it comes to fire offenses.
Okay, thank you.
I did have questions around that too. I don't know, is there merit in trying to, and I realize it could be complex, but I do get questions about how much would it cost if somebody had to call a fire department? And I've had ratepayers that have been reticent to call like for a small fire because they think they're going to be charged. And I'm just wondering if there's any way to provide clarity and even maybe like a clause that states, and we'd have to get, I don't have the language for it, but something around where there would be no charge, like where it's, but I don't know if that's too complex. But then it's also one of those things where from a policy perspective, we want to kind of think worst case scenario, like maybe a really autocratic person applying the bylaw that maybe wouldn't use as much discretion as we have to date. And then like I could see potential issues or even just the uncertainty of somebody who reads the bylaw. I would never want concerns about potential cost to be a deterrent for calling for a regular fire, right?
we can work on both sections to provide a little more clarity and less broad, so it's a little bit more defined, and work on the level of fire, and just so that people don't feel that they're having to pay recovery costs for even a small household fire.
Any other questions or discussion? Counselor Baker?
I had a question, and I assume that when we do a fire ban, villages would be included in that fire ban or not?
Through the chair, I will confirm that, but I do believe it's countywide. But these fire bans on agricultural parcels are usually, whether they're in an incinerator or not. So in a village, you would be allowed to use your fire pit. If it's really severe, I think there's even restrictions on using your fire pit. But it would apply to the villages, but we'll look for clarity for that.
Okay.
Would it apply to the villages if they're like their own autonomous
Oh, through
Government.
the chair, excuse me, I was thinking our hamlets.
hamlets? It would apply, but not villages.
We
of
don't
the town.
declare for the villages like Standard, Hussar, sorry about that, I misunderstood, I was thinking our hamlets, not the villages
Villages would
of
be
Standard,
responsible.
Hussar, and Rockyford. They're responsible for their own, but because their fire chiefs are called and work with Wheatland, I would suspect that they issue their own within their village.
Any other questions?
Just one more comment, I guess. We had a discussion a while ago about this, and I noticed in here that we are able to declare a fire ban by fire region or something like that. I'm sure I saw, we discussed this a year or so ago, I think, and we sort of thought that you couldn't ban a fire. It had to be countywide, but I think here it says,
It referenced regional fire chief.
on 9.1, it says the regional fire chief may impose
Oh,
a
yeah.
ban on all or part of Wheatland County at their discretion. So just a point of interest, I think, because we had discussed this and we thought we could not do that, but.
It's a policy on how the fire bans are called. We do it countywide, but this does allow that if there is an area and it would be an exception, it allows for that. But at the moment, our policy is that's countywide. We don't split it up
Okay.
east, west, north, south.
So the bylaw allows for that, but the policy does not really. The bylaw allows for a part of the county, but the policy, okay, I understand.
Current practice would be to
Right.
be countywide. but
Okay,
We have that provision if at some point
yeah,
that were to be considered.
yeah. Okay.
On page 13, under 6.1.3, and I know Councillor Eichert has discussed this or posed this question with administration, but it's just around assistance and where additional resources are required. The bylaws indicating that requests shall follow the following order of priority: county fire departments or other association fire departments within the county, and then other municipalities or First Nations. And I know Councillor Eichert had posed the possibility of using essentially the closest potential response.
What section?
6.1.3 on page 13 of the package, page 3 of the bylaw. Under assistance calls.
Through the chair to council, there is a standard protocol, and it is called out here as well as in our emergency management plan and in our mutual aid. And so that is something that we did talk with Councillor Eichert about, bringing back a motion if we're going to revisit the protocol for assistance calls. But in the particular division that was addressed, Division 4 or along the origin and everything, if it were a structure fire, Strathmore is the first one called out, and based on what the service level that they offer. But that is something that we talked about, level of service, and who to call is something we would address in our mutual aid agreement with one of our mutual aid partners. Most of them are signed, and it's been in place for, like Rocky View, I believe, is the one that we would look at again to service the west. We could open that back up because it's been a little over a year that they've signed it.
I'm wondering about potentially aligning the language in the bylaw with that consideration. Just while we're doing this, it might make sense to have the bylaw at least open up that possibility, even if it's a clause like exceptions may apply based on level of service or something like that. And then my only other question is on page 20 under 16.1, and I didn't search and find to see if it's anywhere else, but it references the county manager. And in the previous bylaw, there was a definition of county manager that isn't, paraphrasing, was made the county manager the CAO, but because we don't have a county manager, perhaps we want to put the CAO there. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.2, bylaw 2025-29, Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act bylaw readings.
Good morning, Council. Ashley, Information Management Specialist for Wheatland County. I am here today to present the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act bylaw update. The Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, FOIP Act, has been repealed and replaced by two new acts as of June 11th. The two acts are the Access to Information Act, ATIA, and this is focused on access to information, and then Protection of Privacy Act, which is POPA, P-O-P-A, and this is focused on privacy protection. As part of the continued remediation efforts to bring our policies, documentation, and bylaws in alignment with the new legislation, this bylaw has been updated from referencing the former FOIP Act to establish the administrative organizational structure in relation to the new Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and to maintain references to collect fees for the purposes of fulfilling access to information requests. The updates in the new bylaw are quite substantial and represent almost an entire rewrite, reflecting the updated bylaw format and improvements to the clarity and wording of most of the former sections. Included in the report is a copy of the current bylaw and the references that propose the new bylaw. You can find those on page 54 to 61 in the agenda. And that's all.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions regarding the proposed bylaw? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2025-29, ATIA and POPA bylaw, being a bylaw of Wheatland County enacted to establish act-related administrative structure and fees.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. Council's wishes.
We'll move that council moves second reading of bylaw 2025-29.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? call the question. That motion is carried.
I move that council grants permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2025-29.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried unanimously. Councillor Custer?
The council moves third and final reading of bylaw 2025-29.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion was carried. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 5, consent agenda. Council's wishes.
I'll move the consent agenda with, I'd like to remove 5.11 and put it under new business.
So we'll have a motion first to remove 5.11 from the consent agenda. Let me just pull up. So Councillor Eichert, would you move to remove consent agenda item 5.11 and add it under agenda item 6.1?
I will do that.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Any other consent agenda items anybody would like to remove? A motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda,
I will make that motion.
5.1 through 5.10 and 5.12. Thank you, Councillor Eichert. I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We will move to agenda item 6.1, WHMB correspondence dated August 25th, 2025. Councillor Eichert, would you like to speak to the correspondence?
Okay. I believe that, I read the letter, and I'm not sure if the letter came strictly from the CAO or came from under board direction from the CAO. But there's several of the questions, if we address the questions that were asked. As of, the question number 1 was, as of July 8th, what was the cost of the build for the 120-bed lodge unit? And there's no way that you can find that answer. The number I've heard on social media is 90 million, which would be $750,000 a door, which is not affordable housing. And and since we are a willing participant in this build, I think we need to get the proper numbers out there that how this is all feasible. Because I'm 100% sure that if that was the number, which it's just the only number I can find out there, was true, We'd have to figure out, like, is that, like, do we even go forward with this? Does it, like, right now, the county is a willing participant in this bill, but I'm not sure at what number we'd have to have a discussion at what number that building doesn't become that. So that's sort of a follow-up on question 2, which is over the, we've agreed to sort of 59.7 million. Question 3, how do now that the Alberta government, the provincial government has decided that, they've decided that they're going to fund the True North Center, or True North Society for $3.5 million. That means, unfortunately, that Strathmore's name will have been taken out of the pool. They're not going to give money to our municipality again, because they've already given money to the municipalities when Vulcan is looking for money under the same program. And so, you know, it's just sound reason to think that the Alberta government has said, okay, now Strathmore's taking care of the Strathmore and Wheatland County's area has been taken care of. So we need to know what that number is, because that number is going to, however the group decides to go ahead, the county and the town, which are will be the main contributors to any shortage or any money to be made up. We have to be prepared for that. And on the 4th one, that's a very specific question, which is very easy to that number could be found out within 30 minutes, because you would just go into your deal and say, how many checks have we written to each one of these operations since June of 2020 to the current date, and none of that information is available in a audited financial. You know, I've looked at the financial. There'd be the only way that could do that if there was a note about that, but that is not in the financial details. So, so I don't know if this is just from the CAO. Then I think what we have to do is resend this letter to the board to have them answer these questions, because all this money, every last penny of this money, is ratepayers' money. And the ratepayers, in my belief, have the right for transparency and accountability for any money that's going in there. So that's why I just wanted a discussion on this, on going forward on because we are a willing participant in this, and we should, I believe, we at this council table have to have the numbers of what's going forward on this plan. So that's why I pulled it out.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. I similarly had concerns when we received the response from the Lodge. I'll reserve my comments. I'll open it for any other comments or discussion from council. Councillor Kester.
The first question, I think, is answered in the letter. The project's on hold. And at no time has any of the submissions for the new build been more than the 700,000 contribution that was asked of the municipalities. That was never higher than that. So the project can increase in price, but the financing increases, contributions increase, but never has that 700,000 been brought higher. And it's great the True North Society got their grant. I'd like to remind council, I think there was 110 applications for this grant. There's only what, I forget how many municipalities in the province, but different boards, different municipalities have more than 2 applications. And it's not uncommon, I don't think, for different outfits to get it. True North made an application. I've not seen their application. I've not been privy to it, and I haven't talked to them about it. But in that application, their funding sources and monies would be in that application. And to date, I haven't heard of anything of them asking, nor has this council approved any funding for True North. I just can't remember, I might be wrong, but what they do, they're a private outfit, and they're free to apply just the same as anybody else. As far as the money spent, it's in the answer there, you can access the audited financial statements, and if you can't find them in the county, or if you want to do it in your own leisure, there's 3 years worth, I believe, in the website for Wheatland Housing, as long as the minimum. And all this money spent is in them audited statements, and they've been okayed by the province. So as the letter says, the project's on hold, and we have to reassess. We have not had a board meeting since we've been told it's on hold, and it'd be up to the board to decide moving forward if they want to ask or approach different funding sources and see what the future is.
Any other questions or discussion? Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So just listening to what's going on here, I kind of hear where the problem is. So our representative on the boards, it sounds like the board is on the $700,000 contribution, is that's where it's at. But that motion that council had in this municipality, and I believe in Strathmore as well, had a figure of a build cost, 9 million. I don't have it exactly in front of me, but I don't understand how another organization could go and ignore that cap, because that was the information given to the council at the time, and that's what the decision was made on. So I believe what Councillor Eichert's questions are is, if it's gone higher, we need to know how much have you spent to get to this point. I've looked at the audited financial statement. It is not itemized. It is not specific to that at all. It's not in there. It may be grouped into a bunch of other stuff, but there's no way to access that in a way. When I was on the board for a brief period of time, I had asked if there was a budget for the new build committee. There was nothing. There's nothing ever been on. So I have concerns about that. And I don't believe this letter answers any of it. In fact, it makes my questions even stronger. And I just don't understand, for a big project in the area, why everything is not free and above board information. If we are true partners, which I've heard many, many times, then that information should be given willingly without any effort. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
That motion that council passed, I can't remember when it was, it's been a couple of years ago, and it had itemized this amount and that amount. The bottom line was $700,000 for the municipalities. Since that motion was made, council made another motion in support, and the value was purposely taken out of that motion in their letter of support for the new build. But the 700,000, we still stuck to that, because that was the understanding all the municipalities had, was the 700,000 mortgage payments. And as far as the building committee, they did have a budget. Budget was changed a few times. Now, one of the budgets was $300,000 to get this Class B going. Other budgets, they were increased as we needed. And actually, I shouldn't even say the 300,000, but I'm sure those monies will be in the minutes of the board meetings. None of the money spent or any motions were made in camera. As you know, that's highly irregular and against the law. They were all made during a board meeting.
Any other questions or discussions?
I'm sorry, but I don't recall a motion made from this council that had a no figure cost on the total build. I'm looking at my colleagues here, we'll have to look through all the motions, but we definitely need to review this. If that's the interpretation of the Wheatland Housing Management Board, we need to make very clear what we've set forth, because I don't believe that's the case.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I agree. I am thinking it's even more important, if that's the case, that we took the value out, that we need to know what this build is.
I think the reason for this is pretty clear. The Alberta government hasn't put funding forth. From the people I've talked to, they said funding won't be put forth because there's 5 people on this council that insist on writing letters to the ministers, and the ministers are not going to put any funding in here as long as stuff like that's going on. So you can say all you want with your lips that you support this lodge, but you don't in your actions, and I think that needs to be an election issue.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'm shocked that I'm accused, even though that I voted for these, for this build, but there has to be accountability. There has to be transparency. If the build was $90 million, which is the number that I've heard on social media, we have a fiduciary responsibility to say, that is ridiculous, like $750,000 a door for a congregant care facility? Like, I'm sorry, like if that's me being a naysayer, I guess that's me being a naysayer, because every dollar that is going into this operation is taxpayers' money. The taxpayers, in my opinion, have the right to know what that number is, and I believe every board has the obligation to be transparent and accountable for every dollar that they spend. We should not be doing anything that isn't above board. And to say that there's 5 of us on this board that are against this lodge build, that's ridiculous. We signed off on it. We've got county motions, but we've got guidelines. We've got, we're not going to allow people to just go spend everybody's money just because they've got some vanity project. We have the responsibility to be prudent with the taxpayers' money. So I fully disagree that we are against this lodge build. I think we just want guidelines. There's got to be guardrails, and that's all we're asking for.
Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Custer.
As originally stated, this project's on hold. There is no money being spent. It's not moving forward. It hasn't moved forward since the government said no funding at this time. When the next one comes out and we sign a paper or we put together a budget, municipalities will be asked to support it. When the end product is done and the mortgage is ready to be applied for, the municipalities will be asked again, put their name and signature on the mortgage. As I said, the original agreement, $700,000, that was a stick, that was our go-to thing. I can't say anything else. There is no project now. So where you heard the 90 million, if it's true or not, it's irrelevant. But the relevant thing as a board member on council is the total did not exceed the 700,000. And you keep saying this is all taxpayer money. The mortgage is paid for 2/3 of it by the resident rental fees. That's how the funding works. So the municipalities, roughly a third, provincial government a third, and the board management body a third, and it'll be funded through the resident fees. The resident fees, I can't say for sure, and yeah, but it's roughly 2/3 covered by the resident fees and their rents.
Any other questions or discussion? I have an interesting perspective on things because I'm the ultimate in like objectivity right now with not running again in October and no longer going to be the subject of the agitation of the housing and hospice boards. Over the last 8 years, I've seen the power of principled leadership, collaborative decision-making, and the resilience of rural communities. And that's been an incredible experience. But in my time serving on council and on various regional boards, I've also had the opportunity to work alongside many dedicated individuals striving to serve their communities with integrity. However, I would be remiss not to acknowledge that our region has also faced serious and recurring challenges related to governance, challenges that have impacted transparency, accountability, and ultimately public trust. And I agree with Councillor Laursen that this better be an election issue because these issues are not isolated and they deserve serious attention. Strong governance is not just a matter of process. It's foundational to effective service delivery, responsible decision-making, and long-term community well-being. And it requires leaders who are willing to ask hard questions, adhere to best practices, and put the public interest ahead of personal or political agendas. Good governance also means respecting diverse perspectives, recognizing the limits of one's jurisdiction, and being thoughtful stewards of tax dollars, especially at a time when affordability challenges continue to affect so many families and businesses. Public trust is earned not only through outcomes, but through the way decisions are made. And I sincerely hope that this upcoming municipal election brings forward candidates who are deeply committed to strengthening governance and leaders who are prepared to serve with humility, courage, and a firm commitment to ethical and effective leadership. So to that comment, I sincerely agree. What troubled me most about the letter that we received from the WHMB is that the Wheatland Housing Management Body has presented conflicting narratives regarding the future of the Wheatland Lodge new build and hospice project. Recent public communications, which were sent to me from social media, create in my perspective, is a false impression of momentum and viability, while official correspondence to Wheatland County Council paints a very different picture. These inconsistencies, coupled with unresolved governance deficiencies and the broader context of hospice care service allocation in Alberta, raise serious concerns that must be addressed by future councils and by the Housing Board. In the public messaging on social media, WHMB's post reassures the community that the new lodge and hospice build remains active and that they are committed to advancing the project alongside Shasta Seniors Living as it advances. In the letter to our council, WHMB confirms that their application to the AHPP program was unsuccessful, and without this funding, the project is effectively on hold. Council's previous inquiries were dismissed as irrelevant in the current context. So for me, the key issue is that contradiction undermines public trust. The community is being told the project is advancing, while council is informed it's stalled. Stakeholders require accurate, transparent, and consistent information to make responsible decisions about seniors' housing and care planning. And we have to keep that in the context of all of the services that government is responsible for providing. And there are certainly significant areas and multiple areas that the government funds, whether it's us for our massive infrastructure deficit that we're facing and that we're going to need to ensure that we are addressing, whether it's education or healthcare or some of the other serious issues that the government of Alberta is trying to balance with finite fiscal resources. I think we all recognize, and I'm surprised to hear Councillor Lowerson indicate that he believes it's a significant factor in the government's decision around lodge funding, that the unresolved governance issues and the concerns that this council has regarding those is a factor. If I were on the housing management body, I would be genuinely committed to resolving those governance issues. And I will anticipate that the board would respond that they have addressed the deficiencies that were identified in the governance review, but we've also outlined, this council has outlined significant concerns with that review itself and some potential bias and conflict of interest. Or I guess just bias. I'll withdraw conflict of interest. And just in the board's choice of the consultant that had previously worked on advancing this project with WHMB. WHMB representatives have been hostile and dismissive of county concerns for several years, and this letter is consistent with that. WHMB has used autonomy as a shield to avoid accountability, contrary to its responsibilities, and these patterns highlight systemic governance failures. There's also realities around hospice allocation that need to be recognized and that the public needs to understand. The discussion of hospice spaces requires a reality check against provincial standards. Current local allocation, with Shasta Seniors Living securing an AHS contract for 6 hospice beds, equates to approximately 24 beds per 100,000 people if you combine the local populations that the Housing Board serves, which would be the town of Strathmore, Wheatland County, and the 3 villages. That 24 beds per 100,000 people is, and the WHMB-WAH is proposing an additional 6 beds, which would bring that capacity up to 48 beds per 100,000, which is 20 times the current Alberta average for hospice allocation, which is approximately 2.16 per 100,000. There's equity considerations around that. Providing 48 beds per 100,000 in Wheatland while rural Albertans elsewhere travel hours for hospice care would be inequitable and unlikely to receive provincial approval. So I would request that because of the combination of misleading public messaging versus the correspondence that we received, the persistent and unresolved governance deficiencies, and the realities around hospice capacity, this demands immediate attention. And I would urge WHMB to provide a clear, unified, and transparent update to Council and the community regarding the true status of the Wheatland Lodge and Hospice project, address those governance deficiencies, and restore accountability and trust, and realign hospice planning with provincial benchmarks and equity standards to ensure credibility with funders and fairness to other rural communities. I think it's an imperative that we address this, and I appreciate Councillor Eichert's commitment to advocating for transparency around this project. I don't think it's a sign of collaborative commitment to skirt issues like those that were raised in the letter that this council sent on July 10th. As indicated, I also have reviewed the financial statements and I have not been able to determine plans spent to date. I do have some knowledge of costs that were approved historically and when I was on the board for different studies, but I haven't seen transparency around what I believe there was a project, and somebody who more recently served on the board will need to fill in some gaps, but there were significant monthly investments that were made in terms of project, and I believe, was it construction management that had been hired. We don't know what was being spent, and it is I have reviewed the financial statements and I don't see it clearly there, and that's why council has asked for what was spent. In our letter, you see Barry Architecture, Derek Weiss, M3 Developments, and Bird Construction. So I think that was the construction management that had already been hired. In social media posts that the WHMB have made, they do point to the 113 applications. That is one of the exact concerns that this council raised, is that we knew in the greater Alberta context, there was going to be strong competition for finite AHPP resources. And that's why we were asking questions around the request for the additional $900,000 for, I think, again, I don't have my 5-foot tall WHMB file with me today, around, I think it was for a Class A budget that board was hell-bent on pursuing. And from my understanding, a lot of that work is time sensitive. It's only relevant for a finite amount of time. Every dollar or every $1 million that we spend on pursuing a project that has not been advancing is money that could be spent to actually support vulnerable seniors. And that takes me to a whole nother issue around projections that this council is aware of, that if Shasta, there is a very real possibility that a number of current lodge residents, when Shasta becomes available, will move there. I've heard that from residents. I don't know how many residents there would benefit from higher levels of care. I know they love the lodge. I know people get excellent care in the lodge. My grandmother is there, and I'm very grateful. And I'm very grateful for all of the seniors that are served there, and I know we have an incredible staff at the lodge, and I'm so grateful. My number one concern long-term is that we will have excess capacity and the current lodge will close, leaving many seniors unhoused and homeless because they won't be able to afford the new rates. And that's based on information that was provided by the CAO. Again, this is going off memory. I think 65% at that time of lodge residents were on the provincial LAP grant. And when I looked at it and the new rates, many of those residents would not be able to afford the new lodge. And that is heartbreaking to me, because the core function of a lodge is to serve those most vulnerable people. I'm extremely concerned about the misalignment of the public messaging on social media by the Housing Board. There is a post on July 18th where the post outlines that they were not successful for the AHPP grant, and then indicates, because of the tremendous support from our partners in municipalities, we know this build will come to fruition and have a long-term positive impact on our community. Again, I have concerns about expectation management and communicating clearly and accurately to the public. And I saw multiple comments when Shasta put their sign up. There was confusion because they thought it was the lodge, because everybody thinks shovels were going in the ground. And that was not communicated clearly, and the public has not had transparent information around that. There's references in the August 28th public messaging that the Wheatland Lodge had posted around just language that was not consistent with the language in the letter that came to council, that things are on hold. That was not communicated. It's not being communicated that this may not advance if there isn't funding. And to Councillor Kester's comments about the $700,000, everybody in this room knows and understands that that is not the limit of what this council will, and other councils in this region will be responsible for. That could be the initial upfront request for funding, but then this council is responsible for those deficits, and there's some gray area around if that would include loan servicing and things like that. And depending on the projections you run for that, that can become a significant ongoing cost to taxpayers. Regardless, it needs to be done in the most cost-effective, efficient manner, and that information is not being provided. And I think the WHMB owes that, not just to this council, but to the public. Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
I don't know where to start, but I'll start off from
Neither do I.
the very, I'm sorry, I'm speaking now. I have before. As regards to governance, WHMB had a governance review by a provincially respected organization. They come down and did a governance review on the organization and not found the organization wanting.
Councillor Kester, I'm going to interrupt with an important question. Did the consultant that the board chose to do the governance review previously work with the board to advance this project? Yes or no?
He worked with the board previously because he was the CAO in Strathmore. And since the board seen him work and seen the job he could do, the board asked him for different things. Yes, he knows the board. He is also the go-to person for Alberta government. And the province come down and did, I don't know, it was standard practice. They come down and they would do a review of the lodge. They come down with all the not the social housing managers, the different heads of the different sectors of the province, and they spend about a week going through all the minutes, through the accounting, everything, and I actually got a letter back from the head person and said, we have an amazing staff and everything looks good. So the province come down, they have both reports, no questions. And as according to, I'll jump around a little bit to my notes, in the paper I says, we are still, how words go, not newspaper, we're still hoping for a new lodge, but we were on hold because we didn't qualify. As in previous applications, the application stays in the government's hands and they can use it for the next application. We can enhance it, we can add to it, we can withdraw it, but the application is still in. Once you put an application in, it stays in till the funding for that application is done. That's what I've been told. And for council's information, again, this application is a three-part application. It started out meeting with all the municipalities, getting a letter of support from all the municipalities so we can include it into a package to the government to ask for their support. That's where we have not got that support. When we get that support from the government and we get their grant, and then we have to go to CMHC and get their support. And when they give us their support, we have to come back to council again, and then you'll see what the numbers are. Because we don't know what the numbers are now. We don't know what the government's going to give. We don't know what CMHC is going to do. We don't know what the interest rates are going to be. We don't know much of anything because things change. But when CMHC puts their name on it, we have a final number. We have a document. And that document will come here to this council, same as the other municipalities, and you will be able to look at it, ask questions about it, and decide to sign it or not. That's how the process works. You made comments about the Hospice Society and their wish or their desire to add hospice beds. The Hospice Society, Wheatland Hospice, an area society in Wheatland County, is a private entity. They are themselves a group. They aren't funded by the taxpayers. per municipal dollars. They are in receipt of wonderful donations from the public. They have enough money to build their share of the hospice. That part should be not even a consideration of this council. It is private information in a way. It's public, but it has no bearing on municipalities. And then you made comments about Shasta and their building. Wheatland Housing has never been derogatory about Shasta. We need Shasta. We need that care. It's not going to replace the lodge. That's care that our seniors need. We got seniors moving out of this county, out of the villages, to neighbors to look after them. We need that care. As a matter of fact, in 2019, I believe, 2020, we had needs assessment done. And it was determined in that needs assessment that the lodge would need 400 beds in 20 years. In 2020, the province came out with a request for proposals. They figured we needed 110 long-term care beds and 6 hospice beds. They request for proposals, which WHMB applied for, but we weren't successful. Shasta was. Shasta, and that proposal was non-capital money, and the government, if you won, you would get a government contract to provide the care. So it's a private company providing much the same as Sagewood. It doesn't take away from the lodge, doesn't take away from anybody, it adds to the community. It adds care. We still need them lodge beds. Nothing's happened to make that easier. I don't know what else. And to date, no municipal money that I believe has been spent on doing these studies. The Hospice Society has put money into it. The Lodge Board had money in reserves. So it couldn't be determined. And when the government was down, they asked and they couldn't determine. But a lot of the money that was in reserves was raised from when the lodge was built. And the lodge had a mortgage. The lodge had a care contract from Alberta Health to provide care, much the same as you provide home care. And we'd hire the nurses and they'd do the care, much the same as Shasta. Some of the money that we made from that went into paying for the mortgage, plus it went into a reserve. That is the money we spent to do the studies on this new build.
I'm going to
Over
ask you to
$1
pause,
million.
Councillor Kester. We have a 10 a.m. appointment. We will resume discussions on this agenda item as soon as our 10 a.m. appointment is finished. I'd like...
5-minute break, 2-minute break.
Sure. I apologize. Are you guys able to wait just a few more minutes? Okay, thank you so much. We will take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 10:09. We'll call the meeting back to order, and I would like to welcome Staff Sergeant Will Gosh with Strathmore RCMP, and I think you might have another representative who has joined him this morning. Thank you for being here. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Worship, Council. Thanks again for allowing me to come before you to provide an update on this quarterly report, which summed up our last fiscal year policing activities in our rural areas within the Strathmore detachment area. For ease of reference, or I guess efficiency, all my comments have been made through the CAO to the chair and through to council for the duration of this brief update. guess I'll multitask here between the reports. All right, so as all of you may be aware, we focused on three main objectives throughout the last fiscal year. First being the reduction of property crimes between break-and-enters, theft of motor vehicles and theft from motor vehicles. Just looking through our results, or at least how we achieved those objectives throughout the year. A few of our programs in play were our habitual offender management program. That program's been in place for the last 3 years since I've been here in Strathmore. We've found that it's had some very positive results with respect to ensuring that those people that we're aware of in our communities that are bound by conditions, particularly related to offenses that are significant and most impactful to our communities, we just to ensure that these people or properties are compliant with their conditions and ensuring they're maintaining a law-abiding lifestyle and not having an adverse effect on our residents. Throughout Q4, we had 14 habitual offenders that we were monitoring. 2 of them were residing within Wheatland County. Throughout our checks in the last quarter of the last fiscal year, 1 person was charged. We were able to conclude 5 of those habitual offender management profiles simply due to their conditions expiring and ensuring that that they were, again, complying with them throughout the duration. And out of those, 2 of them moved out of our area, which is at times can happen with regular maintenance and monitoring. This program has been very successful. It's helped us to achieve our overall objectives throughout the year. In addition to our Persons of Interest program, again, people who may not be bound by conditions, but those that we are aware of in our communities, again, maintaining that contact and ensuring they're still living a law-abiding lifestyle. Our security screw program to prevent license plate theft remains in effect at the locations that are noted within the report. All of our dealerships, the fire department, the detachment in Strathmore, as well as the Langdon office, all have them available for free of charge. We do offer crime prevention through environmental design assessments upon request, or unfortunately at times it's at a time where our members are responding to a call for service at a property. At that time, guidance and some feedback is provided to ensure that we can try to minimize the impact or going forward to try and minimize the likelihood of being re-victimized. In part, through assistance with our Watch Clerk program, our members are able to maintain high visibility in our rural areas. We do hotspot checks or hotspot patrols through all of our rural communities. These are the results that I have before you. Perhaps I should keep up scrolling along here. This is not the right report here. There we go. So we maintain patrols through our rural communities. These are the checks that are documented by our members. I can tell you there are many more that are happening out there, but these are the ones that they're able to capture. Again, it's maintaining visibility within our rural communities to ensure that our members are well placed to prevent, detect, and deter crime. I have before you some graphics with respect to our performance both in both counties that we provide service to, but focusing on Wheatland County. Our Q4 results really landed at, through break-and-enters, we were on par through Q4 with last year's results for break-and-enters. We were reduced in that quarter from our 6-year averages, excuse me. Theft of motor vehicles were down as well to 0, as well as theft from motor vehicles in Q4 that was at 0 as well. So we're happy with those results. Year end, or actually maybe I should focus a little bit on a graphic here for theft of motor vehicles. In the county here, I think we all guessed that pickup trucks are the vehicle of choice if they're being stolen out of our county area here. Our year-end results within Wheatland County for break-and-enters, although we were elevated from last year, we were still met our goal of reducing our numbers from our 6-year averages by 5%. We landed at 8%. For theft of motor vehicles and theft from motor vehicles, we saw some fairly significant reductions in those areas as well, so we're happy with those results. Our second priority for the year was road safety. Our goal was to maintain and reduce our reportable collisions and injury collisions from our 6-year averages through a variety of enforcement measures, working with our county peace officers as well throughout the year, whether it be regular traffic enforcement, our check stop program, and bar walks through our licensed establishments. I can say, outside of these graphics that I'm showing you here, that we've had some positive results throughout the year. Some challenges that we're facing. In Q4, I prepared some collision, factors for you. I can tell you the The most significant collisions that we're experiencing within the county areas is speed relative to conditions, so people driving a little too fast for the weather, crashes at intersections, excuse me. So those are where our most significant crashes are happening that are causing injuries. Our year-end results, just focusing on our year-end, our reportable collisions were reduced, and some of that might be attributed to the increase of the value of damage that's required to report a collision. That increased from $2,000 to $5,000 of damage. There may be some positive traction attributed to that, but with the way vehicles are built these days, everything's over $5,000 damage if you have any damage at all. Our injury collisions, we are struggling with that a little bit. We were elevated from last year and from our 6-year historical averages. Again, from what I can see is speed relative to conditions, at times animal strikes, but those intersection offenses are something that's problematic for us. There may be some level attributed to increased traffic flows. We are seeing a lot more traffic moving through our area, particularly with some growth around Strathmore and moving towards the city. But that's something we're going to keep an eye on, and we'll do our best to try to tackle that through the next fiscal year. Our third priority, which we find to be very, very important to us, is making sure that we're in the communities that we're serving and attending community events whenever possible. Communities are county specific throughout the Q4 at the last part of last year. Myself and one of our members attended an open house in Carsland with the council at an open house, and it was a good opportunity to meet with some of the commercial and industrial investors and businesses that are setting up shop within the county. We had some great feedback as far as what their concerns were in the development and building phases, but also to maintain good relationships when they're in full operation. So it was a great opportunity. Our community liaison program is active. We have contacts with a number of organizations within our communities. Very briefly, to draw, again, more attention to some of the other programs we have in place. Our Rural Alberta Capture Program, people are signing up. It would be nice to see more. Regardless, we have had some very good community support when video surveillance is available. All of our residents have been very helpful with managing or helping our members during investigations when they're responding to calls for service. Our online crime reporting is available. I would encourage people to utilize that if something occurs on a person's property or they've been a victim of a crime, maybe very minor, perhaps the person may not think there's anything that can be done about it, and they don't want to bother the police. Those are still incidences that we would like to hear about. The online crime reporting tool is great. You just pop in your information on the computer or on your smart device. If it's something that we can respond to, somebody will call them back, but at the very minimum, we can track where crime is happening and what's going on in our areas. The benefit of that is it helps inform law enforcement on what is happening in our areas and where to dedicate resources or to strategize around dealing with certain aspects of crime. So if we know where it's happening and what's going on, or certain times of day, for instance, we can formulate a plan to try and deal with that. That's all available through our Alberta RCMP app. It's actually a great app to have on your phone. You have access to all of our programs, which includes the online crime reporting, Crime Stoppers. You can see our crime mapping with respect to crime data that's happening within our areas in RCMP jurisdictions, along with a lot of other useful information that's in there as well. So I would highly encourage residents to take advantage of that. Briefly, with respect to our Watch Clerk program, again, I'd like to express my gratitude to the county for their continued support. It's really enabled our members to remain highly visible within our communities, and in fact, it is the envy of many other detachments that we have that level of support. So again, thank you. I have some numbers here for our fiscal year-to-date calls for service throughout the last fiscal year, and all of our calls seem to be relatively static or consistent with what we've been seeing over the past couple of years. That's the conclusion of our year-end report. Overall, we've had some very good success with our activities in the communities. I will be, perhaps if I can impose upon council for some feedback with what activities are desired for us to focus on into this next fiscal year. We've continued our priorities from last year into this year because we found them to be most problematic. With that, it doesn't discount focusing on other crime trends. One trend that was really starting to surface was farm pivot, copper wire theft. We did have our Southern Alberta Crime Reduction Unit, as well as members from a number of detachments, including Strathmore, that focused on this problem. One offender who we believe was responsible for the majority, if not all, of those types of thefts in our area was apprehended. and charged with a number of offenses, which included matters out of our area, or Wheatland County. So I did send that information in with the media release to the county administration. Here it was in the media. I sent it also to our Western Irrigation District administration as well. I did have meetings with them to discuss the problem, and we did have good, productive conversations with how irrigators can help us work with these types of crimes and ensure that if we do recover copper wire, or if we do have an offender in custody or evidence we need to compare, then we've worked on lines of communication to ensure that we can close cases more efficiently. But that is my report with our last fiscal year. As far as moving forward, I would recommend continuing with these programs because they are effective. But of course, we want to make sure that we're receiving feedback from the public, our elected officials, and certainly our representatives of Wheatland County in the form of council as well to help inform what it is the public would like their police service to do for them into this fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions regarding the update? Councillor Larson.
Thanks for the report. You wanted some feedback, so I think most of my division's not in your area, but this is more for the force in general. I like the monitoring the habitual offenders and persons of interest, because I think that's a good way to get ahead of the thing before an event happens. So I would suggest you definitely continue with that. You could expand the license plate screw thing beyond your division. And then the other thing I would say is we were working with some neighboring detachments on some suspicious activity that was going on in my division, and that's been, it's ongoing. You'll know what that means. So if you, I don't know if you do, but Drumheller's held open houses in my division. I don't know if you guys do that, but I think open houses, getting out in front of the people to know that, to get to know you guys like we know you, and then they might feel more, it's just a suggestion, but then they might feel more comfortable reporting stuff, whereas before they would, you know, there's always that, and I think it's not necessarily valid, but there's that, well, there's no point reporting it to them because they're not going to come out and do anything about it anyway. I think open houses is a good opportunity for that. So that would be my feedback. Anyway, thanks for your report.
Thank you, Councillor. And that is, we have held open houses here. Actually, we held one here at Wheatland County at the offices in the past. It's something that we do plan to get into now that, you know, again, there always seems to be something, right? Whether it's G7, whether it's a summer, you know, summer months and wildfire season, but that is certainly something that we are planning to do, and I look forward to holding one here in the fall.
And I think for comments regarding work in other detachments, those would be best directed to those detachment commanders. Is that accurate? I know you collaborate and work together on.
That's correct. If there's something that's affecting an area that happens to be crisscrossing between our detachment areas, we maintain close contact and we work together on those types of investigations.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment. Thank you for informing municipal government and keeping us informed. There's nothing like 4 RCMP vehicles going through Speargrass to get about a dozen phone calls. So even if it's not what the incident's about, just, you know, safety, it's nothing that, you know, there's nothing major going on. Thanks.
Yes, we did have a matter we responded to out in Rockyford where we had enough members there to increase their population by, I think, over a third. But there were some of the council there that were also involved, so they were very well informed, and they got to watch it from their picture windows in their houses. So in that particular incident, our members identified some habitual offenders that were hunkered down in the area. A number of firearms were seized, as well as a number of a variety of stolen items. So we had two district crime reduction units in the area, plus we had our emergency response team and dog handlers. One was apprehended quite easily. The second took a little more effort. You know, they were doing snow angels and the ceiling insulation in the house there, so they thought that maybe they'd be undetected, but they still got them out anyway. So certainly, we're very aware that a large police presence at time can be alarming, but at the same note too, again, we try to stay as connected to our stakeholders as possible, just to keep people informed. So that's very well received and a very, very good point.
Any other questions? Councillor Kester.
Yeah, I'm from the Rocky Ford area. And yeah, I don't live in Rocky Ford, but I heard about the commotion. And one thing I never did hear is none of the residents were scared. They were concerned, but they weren't fearful. They knew the RCMP were there and providing their protection. So thanks for that. It was very professional, and the residents, they put up with it, but they understood what the big picture was. So thank you for that. That was just incredible, really, when I think about it. And then the other one is I'm an irrigator too, and I fear for my pivots. I know some of the neighbors aren't so lucky. Have you had any success in finding anybody, or is there, like a good news story would sure make somebody feel a lot better out there?
Yes, in fact, we did apprehend a habitual offender that at the time was residing within our area. They don't anymore, but with help from our Southern Alberta District Crime Reduction Unit and our analysts, we were able to put together a crime series. We had surveillance on the subject, and were able to apprehend them with a number of stolen items, including copper wire, and we did tie them to at least 5 different thefts. My advice when I met with the manager of WID was, a number of things. When copper wire thefts occur at the pivots, we need to know about it, and we would really appreciate those reports so we know which areas have been targeted. Sometimes it's multiple times. We can also provide some feedback as well on how to perhaps protect the pivots. Some things are as small as adding large clamps to the wires at frequent intervals. So it takes offenders a lot more time to try and cut that wire off. And if they do get something that's not very much, and hopefully it minimizes the kind of dollar value loss to the pivot itself. It is labor intensive at the beginning to install those clamps, or perhaps to enable electronic devices that give you a signal or an alert when you've lost power to your pivot. That might be a time to notify the police so we can be out there in real time when they're out there operating. So these are a number of ideas that we did put out there. The offender that we apprehended, actually, we did do a media release on that. I sent a copy over here to administration to put on the website. I'm sure it would have been broadcast. And I sent it to WID as well so they could share that with their irrigators. So there is a very positive story with that from what I'm aware of. Again, this is just what's reported to us. We've seen a large plummet in these types of thefts now that person's been apprehended and they're no longer in our area. Doesn't mean they're still not active. We're still watching them. They're in another area, but we scared them out of our area for a little while anyway. So, but again, it's that working with the community, having those real-time reports, and at least the ability to share some information on how to make small investments that might help protect yourself from being a victim of these types of crimes, but also to minimize the impact of what damage might be done, and hopefully it's less interruption to irrigation and a reduction in any kind of damage in the crops. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just on behalf of council, I want to thank you for your consistent reporting, and I really appreciate the way you structure the reports. It's an easy way to see the work that's being done and how you're focusing on the priorities that were established with collaboration with the municipalities in the region. So we appreciate it. Thank you. And please thank your members for their service. If there's no other questions, perhaps a motion to receive the report for information.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will return to agenda item 6.1, and I'll return the floor to you, Councillor Kester.
Yeah, just to finish off, there was mention of a Class A budget the board wanted. Board didn't need it per se, but it was to dress up the application to make it move ahead of everyone else. There are other applicants out there that have it included in theirs, I believe. And it was to make our application maybe a little more predictable. And we didn't get the money, so we didn't do it. The requisition the county pays money to the WHM is deficit financing to board operations. None of the money from the deficit financing went to any planning. That was all reserve money. As I mentioned before, Wheatland County has not paid for anything, nor has the other municipalities, nearest we can tell. The original, you talk back to that original motion that had all the money in it. That was following a presentation by our consultant, Derek Weiss, and we had how much we thought it was going to cost. But more importantly, it had in there what the municipal contributions would be. Now, I can't remember for sure what they were or are. I think it was, sorry about that, if you heard it. Gosh. My hearing aids. Where was I? The requisition amounts. Oh, to original presentation. If it was 10 million upfront money or not, I just forget, 6 million. The number changed because of the county wanting to borrow money to pay it down. That was included in the mortgage payments. I'm not 100% sure what that money was. But anyway, that money was approved, and that's where the 700,000 was the yearly deficit. Have to pull it back, but the important thing is that is the money that went into the application. The application changed over the time because of CMHC grants, funding, things changed, the government changed. Originally, the government would only spend 88,000 maybe on a door. They recognized lodges cost more, they upped it, so we increased it. Different little nuances that went into changing the budget to, gosh darn it, to changing the application for the province. As I said, it was the application to the province we were working on. We had the okay from the county for a certain amount. We're working on the province. And when we get that, we work on CMHC. When we get it all back and done, we come back to the municipalities and have them approve it. We're not hiding anything. Okay. The money's always stayed the same. And there's lots of talk of this council didn't like the governance report. I've never seen a motion to that. But there are council members didn't like it because that board member or that individual did work for the board. This individual is recognized by the province. He's one of the best in the province, I've been told, probably believe. But just because you don't like a governance report doesn't mean it's not good. I don't like lots of things. It doesn't mean it isn't accurate. If there's not any more questions. Oh, one more thing about Shasta. Everybody's been expecting this for a long time, for somebody to come. If it was Shasta or whoever, it was a request for proposals back in 220. And it's their business how they announce it, how they fund it. It's their money. It's private money, and they put up the capital, they build it, they have a contract to deliver services to the people that will be staying there. And I believe it'll be like Sagewood, the residents will also have to pay a fee to stay there. It would be no different, to my understanding, than Sagewood. It's the same thing, and we work very well with Sagewood. They're no competition for us. In fact, lots of our seniors go to Sagewood. Not directly, some go directly, some end up in the hospital, and from the hospital go to Sagewood. And if there's no room at Sagewood, then they go to neighboring centers in the province. We don't offer that level of care. We offer home care, basic home care, 1 shift a day, 8 hours a day. And if you need more care than that, the lodge cannot provide it. And if you want more care than that, you have to arrange that through yourself. You can have, it's not unheard of that somebody comes in and spends the night with a resident for that extra care. But none of that money comes from the lodge, nor from the provincial government. That's extra. I don't know what else to say.
Any other questions or discussion?
I just wanted to point out that actually this information on council resolution is at our fingertips because our staff have done a really good job on our main county page. It says Wheatland and Hospice Project, and it says council's position on proposed housing, and it has all the resolutions there. So my interpretation of these motions, there's some here that have specific monies attached to them. They've not been rescinded. They're still standing. So if there was something after the fact that the board feels cleared that way, I don't see it that way. But there's a number of motions here, and I would think it would be really good for the lodge board to look at these and think, have we actually answered these questions? Councilor Riker has brought up questions we've asked him several times before through this in this chambers, and again, they're not getting answered to the level, and I don't think it's asking anything hard, and I just don't understand why we can't just come all on board. You mentioned about funds that were collected from before. When I first got elected here, the requisition amount from the lodge board to the county was a flat fee, and it had been for years, same way. And it was just always that way. There was no data backing up why, how much. I'm pretty sure a lot of that went in to build a reserve fund. That's since changed. Now it has to be, but we follow the act, how it should be, how it should have been a long time ago. And that wasn't an easy process to get through, but that's the way it is now. But I just see there's a whole bunch of resolutions here. If the board feels that they've answered all these, and that's the answer I'm getting, this problem isn't going to go away. A new council could come in. It could be new people, but what if we're all the same people here? We have to work together on this. So just answer the questions. Be open and honest and tell if it's $80, $90 million for the total bill, tell people that. This is a projected cost. We all need to know that. To wait till the last minute and say, well, here's it all, and then wait for a council to approve it on a huge holy. Because we know at the end of the day, the taxpayers of the municipalities around here are responsible for the loss of that operation. That's what concerns me.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I just want to chime in, I guess. I have heard from residents in my area that they do support the lodge, and I support the lodge, but I do feel like it's important that we keep affordability as the key. It does alarm me if it is a $90 million project now. I mean, at $60 million, it's $545,000 a door, which is already pretty steep. I do understand you paying for common areas in that per door cost, but it's still pretty high cost if you think about it. And if it's 90 million and $750,000 a door, yes, that is alarming. I do hope the board is keeping that in mind, that it is affordable housing, and making sure that their building is not kind of going overboard in terms of bells and whistles, I guess. I don't know. It does have to be kind of something that's basic and affordable.
Any other questions? Councillor Kester.
We have a letter from Wheatland County. If you can't find it in the resolution packer, maybe county has a copy of it. We have it. We sent it to the government. As I said before, the numbers are not final numbers in any way. They're just part of a mix to make an application. We're using the numbers that were presented to council and you okayed. Those numbers have not changed, not once. As far as Shannon's things that we're spending too much or keeping things on track, this is affordable housing. We remember and we know who this housing's for. We have done studies on our current residents, plus the area residents, on the rents that are paid, and we've looked at the information from line 150 on all their applications, and it was determined that we could do a pay structure that is different than the one we use now if we built different rooms. That's all part of our planning process. And in that plan, in that pro forma, if you remember, I think the mortgage payments were close to $2 million a year, of which the municipalities was $700,000. The residents were paying the rest. They were also paying for a reserve fund as mandated by CMHC. They were paying all the operating costs. There was no deficit financing to be part of this new build. I know it has to be at 95 or 98% occupancy, and it might take a year to get there. Those are valid questions, and those are things the board will have to look at when approval time comes. But to be accused of not being open and fair, we've not changed anything since, and we are very cognizant of the ratepayers that we have. And also to fund the new lodge, the government of Alberta has increased the LAP grant and the lodge funding grants to help pay for, and they've done a lodge study. So things are moving forward with the government. And this last application, most of the money went out to supportive housing. I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 lodges got any money. I'm not the government, but I know at Wheatland Housing, I take a great offense to calling us that we're trying to hide something. We've got audited financial statements. We have our minutes online. Have a look. We answer to the government. They look at our line, they approve it. They approve our statements, and they come down and they've done an audit of our books for the last 6 years. They don't just do that for Wheatland Housing. They do that for every management body in the province. It's their fiduciary duty to make sure everything's going good. We answer to the government of Alberta. We are a board mandated through an act of legislature. and the board members are answerable to the minister.
Councillor Larson.
I'll just add a couple of things to that. I've heard now twice this $90 million on social media. Social media is not something that's typically worth believing. The board, to the best of my knowledge, has never put out a number of $90 million, so why you choose to believe this is quite frankly beyond me. There's a gray area for funding, was mentioned by the Reeve, for paying the mortgage. The housing management body is not allowed to requisition to pay the mortgage, plain and simple. We've got support from all of our partners except for some of the people here at this county who keep writing letters to the ministers. So I think this just needs to get solved in an election.
Any other questions or discussion? I'm not going to reiterate all of the concerns that this council has expressed and have been endorsed by the majority of council, which still according to the MGA, all of council are required to support. I will say that some of Councillor Kester's comments provide an even stronger rationale for the board to commit to answering council's questions. So if you have nothing to hide, answer the questions. Share with the public what the current budget is. Share with the public and this council what you have spent to date. I understand that the Government of Alberta is responsible for oversight of your work. They've also delegated the responsibility of governing affordable housing for this region to your board. And I think through that delegation, there is a responsibility to be transparent. If you have nothing to hide, share what you have spent on studies since, let's go back to 2016. That's the first copy I have of a study. Share that information, be transparent. Provide your rationale for doing so. On March 27th, Councillor Kester, in a presentation to the town of Strathmore, indicated that municipalities could just pony up more money if there were financial issues with provincial funding. So I think there is some inconsistencies, again, in some of the communication. Councillor Larson saying that individuals in this room are choosing to believe that number. That wasn't my interpretation of comments made. It was something that was floated. I also have gotten questions around what the updated cost for construction would be, and I simply refer that to the Housing Management Body Board, but there are certainly individuals who have concerns that that's not being shared. Reality is reality. Construction costs escalate at times, and they're very dynamic. So I think that would be just a good thing to share with the public, as well as what's been spent to date. I also think it's really critical going forward that everybody keep in mind that it's unquestionable that there's need in this region for affordable housing, and specifically for affordable housing for seniors. That I'm not questioning that. Where I think it's important is to keep that in that context of there's significant need across the entire province. And we need to be making decisions around expenditures related to potential projects relative to that potential need, and recognizing that there's finite resources. We're actually creating financial burden on other seniors when we're increasing taxation through costs that are not contributing to a project that's actually being built. If we continue to ignore that provincial context of not just the demand for affordable housing, but also other government services and the pressures around those, we're going to continue bleeding money that could be actually serving those seniors. And to continue saying that this council has not contributed to reserves is really irrelevant. If the Lodge generated a profit from providing care to seniors, I've said this before, That's unconscionable to me as well, particularly if that profit that was generated off of those seniors receiving home care was simply spent on shelf art that is not contributing to the building of an actual project in a timely manner. Going forward, there's going to be continued uncertainty. A lot of the financials are based on a number of assumptions, and there's multiple scenarios. And I know this council has asked questions previously about the scope of scenarios that have been analyzed, and I still think that that's incomplete. The bottom line, and I did just find the reference that I was thinking about earlier. So in April of 2023, the WHMB CAO was quoted in the local paper indicating 56 of the current 95 lodge residents were subsidized by the Lodge Assistance Program grant. The last pro forma that I saw, and I couldn't pull it up, well, I actually couldn't read it on my screen. I need stronger glasses. Indicated in my notes I have either 12 or potentially 16 rooms that were LAP grant eligible. So that means that there could conceivably be 40 to 44 based at that time, recognizing that, again, that's a dynamic situation. Seniors that if we did not have the demand for lodge spaces, and if the board proceeded to close the current lodge, as they have indicated publicly, could be a scenario if they couldn't maintain both lodges. I appreciate that in 20 years we have a high demand, and I appreciate that there's been one scenario modeled where it could take 1 year to get to full capacity. We full well know that that is based on assumptions, and it's impossible to predict people's preferences around congregate care living, what increases in higher level care will do to that demand. So there's some very real concerns. It's easy to paint this picture as paint a picture of this council as being unsupportive. That is the furthest thing from the truth. What I have consistently heard is support for efficient, which is part of the board's mandate, provision of affordable housing for vulnerable seniors in this region. Asking questions is not an indication of a lack of support. It actually contributes to supporting that efficient provision of that service. I have heard some discussion about potentially, the very initial request was to resend the questions to the board. I guess it's up to council whether there's a preference to resend and request. And I think prudent, given that Councillor Kester indicated that the application is standing with the province and will be considered during the next tranche of AHPP funding. If I were on the WHMB board, I would be committing to answer every question that the member municipalities have and providing that information to the public so that as these questions go forward, rather than relying on intimidation or publicly defaming our council to try and get support or threatening with actively engaging to have councillors who are doing their due diligence not be re-elected. I would be collaboratively committing to answering those questions transparently and provide the information. You're saying you have nothing to hide, but you're refusing to answer the questions, and that's concerning. Any other questions or council wishes? Do we have a desire to resend the letter with a request that, given the fact that the application continues to sit with the Government of Alberta for consideration with for the next AHPP tranche, that comprehensive information be provided to council? I see Councillor Kester. Go ahead.
You mentioned in a presentation at Strathmore Council, you took a quote from me saying, pony up more money. That's just a few words out of a presentation that was, I don't know how long. It was fairly extensive. I can't remember for sure, but I believe it was in regards to our application to HPP. How do we make it better? How do we do it? One of the things is the municipalities could pony up more money and make the application look better. Instead of putting in the bare minimum, maybe we can add a little bit more. Nothing's ever come of it. You've taken words and you think this is a frivolous game for me. No, this isn't. The protection and the safety of seniors is paramount for me. You say these are assumptions that people are going to be here. That needs assessment come from the census report. It added on so many years when the census was done. He knows how many people are going to be this age. They know 20% need help. Since this assessment was done, we've had different developers come in, and then Strathmore is potentially going to grow, so is the county going to grow. That needs assessment will probably have to be redone. It's not going to get better. The need is there. And these numbers you keep asking for, they're part of an application for the Alberta government to give us a grant. The numbers we're working with is what council approved, what all the municipalities approved. We have that. When we get the grant, we'll have that. When we get the CMHC, we'll have that. And that'll tell us what we can build. We have spent no other money. We have no other money. We have nothing to report. All we can report is what council's already given us in a motion. That's it. We spent some money on some planning, yeah. And it come from our reserves, yeah. It's all in the financial statements. I don't know. We'll let the ratepayers decide.
Can you point to where in the financial statements we can find the response to the fourth question in the letter that was sent? How much has the lodge/hospice spent from, in that letter it said June of 2020 to today on plans, et cetera, for the lodge build? How much have they paid for the following companies? Barry Architecture, Derek Weiss, M3 Developments, and Bird Construction. And I think where part of my rationale for wanting to understand is as fiscal stewards of tax dollars, whether it's provincial or municipal, we have a duty to ensure that those funds are being used in the most efficient way possible. I have concerns that, for example, a construction management firm was hired well in advance of a project being approved. From conversations, it's actually interesting. I think we received some information. I believe administration reached out and inquired about what some other housing boards had spent to date on a couple of projects that were approved. And it was quite a modest amount. And to my understanding, they had not hired construction managers prior to projects having approval. And so I think it's really coming down to transparency around how funds, regardless of where they've been generated from, have been utilized. And I'll bring it back to the fact that they alternatively, rather than hiring consultants or construction management firms, could be spent on vulnerable people. Council's wishes. We'll go Deputy Reeve Clausen and then Councillor Kester.
So being at the start of this discussion, it sounded like this letter has been generated and was not reviewed by the board. It was replied back to by staff. I don't believe the board.
Is that accurate from our board members?
What's that?
What Deputy Reeve Clausen just said, is that accurate?
I couldn't hear him.
So the letter that was generated with the questions, has that been reviewed by the WHMB board? Or was it just staff? Because at the start, it sounded like staff had done the response.
It has not been to a board meeting yet, this last letter.
Okay, so then I think it should go to the board, and the board can decide to respond or not, because it was a question to the board. I think we should send it to the board. I think it was actually addressed to the board originally. So,
It was actually addressed to the CAO, so perhaps if there's a,
so then we should redo it to the board, I guess.
yeah, it could go from council under the Reeve to the board chair, Councillor Kester, with the Housing Management Body Board.
So just, just for clarification, I'm wondering if we should not ask, also add a question, whether this project is on hold or not. Because from what I've read on what Wheatland, on social media, on the difference between Shasta and the Wheatland Lodge, they were talking about this project going forward in a different, so maybe we should ask, how that would help clarify the ratepayers that the lodge is on hold for, for an indefinite period of time until whatever tranche of fundings that they can get going for. So I'm just trying to clarify stuff. So I don't know how council feels about that, but it probably, if this project is in fact on hold, then there has to be some clarification on the information that is out there, because I'm under the assumption that there was just going to be a change of direction kind of thing.
Any other questions or discussion or council's wishes? Councillor Kester.
The project's on hold because the last announcement, there was no money mentioned for WHMB. It's on hold. The article you're referring to was a letter that was sent from WHMB in support of Shasta, informing all the people, ratepayers, citizens, the differences of the two bills, what you can expect from one and expect from the other. It's simple. You can write a letter and ask, that's fine. I don't know what else to say. I really don't.
I'll make the motion that we resend the letter to WHMB board and add a question about an update on project build timelines. Is it on hold? What does on hold mean? Clarification.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Previously, we have seen actions by the board where funding was not provided, and there was still significant expenditures. I believe the construction management costs, correct me if I'm wrong, continued after the first tranche of HPP funding was not successful. So, yeah, I think fair to ask. And if the board is taking a different approach this time, personally, I am pleased to hear that. If spending has been slowed or paused until there's successful funding, for me, that would have been prudent all along. Councillor Kester.
We don't need HPP funding. What we need is a mortgage. To get the mortgage, I think we need 25% collateral. And we'll get the mortgage. HP doesn't give us any money. If we don't have a benefactor, the municipalities, there's nobody else. We need 20% equity before we get the mortgage. That's why it's on hold. We don't have the 25% in equity. Our plan was to get it from the municipalities and from the provincial government. If one wants to step up and give us more, we'll certainly be happy. But that's the bottom line. We don't have the money. And the third option is we can just pay for it all up front if we get the money. You gotta have money to build it. It's either a mortgage or cash. And the mortgage takes 20% down or 25% down, not 100% sure which number. Simple as that. Business carries on every day. People buy farms, people buy businesses, borrow money. Same thing applies.
But vulnerable Albertans aren't paying those mortgages, and that's where the discussions around assumptions comes in and what that could cost the residents, and there is some uncertainty there. I know you can amortize for 50 years and there's different things, but you're still looking at a significant mortgage payment. Councillor Laursen has indicated from his perspective that the municipalities would not be responsible for that. So that leaves the vulnerable residents who are looking for affordable housing in the region, which is the core function of the board to service that mortgage. Councillor Kester.
Keep referring to assumptions. We're assuming. We're not assuming anything. We know we need to have the 20% down. Our assumption is we'll have equal contributions from the province and the municipalities. If that doesn't come to pass, for whatever reason, we can assume that. That would be an assumption. What's your share? Assumption. Fair enough. But the bottom line, I'm not assuming in the future our seniors are going to be safe, happy, and living in the home they built. We know there's going to be a need. We know that. Are we content to sit back and say, we're assuming that you don't need a place to live? You can move someplace else? I'm not making any assumptions. I have a hard evidence in the needs assessment and the population of our center that we need this. We need it. Why do you think Shasta's coming in? Why do you think Sagewood? 200 beds at Sagewood, 100 beds at Shasta. That's just for care. Not just for care, it is for care. People see the need in our community. I'm not assuming the need. It's there, it's here, I feel it.
I think I have agreed with you on that. I'm sorry that you're missing my point that a pro forma is a future financial performance predictive tool that must rely on assumptions and scenario modeling, as indicated on the pro forma that has been provided to this council by your board. And right in the pro forma, it indicates things like operating environment assumptions, occupancy year 1 plus 98%, rent and service model as presented. Annual municipal requisitions are necessary to meet the DCR threshold 1.1, to access CMHC funding. Should this scenario be realized, building operations, blah, blah, blah. There's no provision for a ramp up to full occupancy period in this scenario. That's what a pro forma is. That's how you plan projects for this. In one of the pro formas that was provided to us, management have to determine the probability of achieving this as an outcome. I think you're missing some foundational critical analysis of this project, which adds to my concerns. Please go ahead.
I think you're missing my point of what I've said from the very beginning. You've been presented with pro forma. That pro forma has not changed in substance. That is what we're banking on for the municipalities and the provincial government to provide. The total numbers could change. Inflation, COVID. but so has the income changed. But the pro forma for the paying of the building and for the numbers of seniors there is still valid. It's not an assumption we don't have anybody to fill it. We do. The only assumption is where we're going to get the money. Is it municipal, or is it provincial, or is it both? Or is it public? Those are assumptions, granted. But the forma, in its own essence, is a business document. It's the best we can do. There's no,
I'm not going to say it again.
That's fine.
Any other questions or discussion?
I believe there's a motion on the floor for myself, one. Two, hearing about getting a mortgage and 20 or 25% would make a huge difference in what actually it is. Because when I go to buy something, or anybody goes to buy something, the first thing your financer goes, how much do you need? And from what I hear here, we don't even know how much the build cost is. Maybe the board knows. They got an older version, but I mean, if you go to a financer, they need to know what the build cost is. Otherwise, they're not gonna give you money. Pretty straightforward. It's just the way it works.
I know how it works. I've borrowed money in my day. And I borrowed some at 20% and some at 25, and some with 0. I'm not sure if it's 20 or 25, but it's in the pro forma. It's what was presented to council.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion?
I would like it recorded, but please.
Certainly. Any other questions or discussion?
Ken, just for my, I understand the first 4 questions because they're written down. The 5th question, what would that be? I just need that fleshed out, just for my own sake.
Basically, an update on where it's going. Is it on hold? What does on hold mean? When's the next round of funding, kind of thing? What's the, I don't know, whatever we figure out, that's the one thing, right?
So perhaps it would be prudent to break for 5 minutes and give administration a couple of minutes to draft a 5th question that captures the essence of the discussion, and then we can reconvene to approve the language.
Perfect, thank you.
We will reconvene at 11:20. We'll call the meeting back to order, and I believe administration has drafted some language for a 5th question for consideration for the letter. Sorry, I just noticed it's on our screen. So the motion reads that council direct administration to resend the letter to the WHMB board and request an update on the status, should we just clarify the status of the proposed new lodge/hospice build?
Yes.
So I just want to say before we vote that I'm going to vote in support of this. I think that if the board believes that the numbers have not changed, then they can certainly respond saying that the amount they expect to spend on the build is whatever it was, around 60 million. I don't know if 50 something. I don't remember, but anyways, they can certainly respond that way, and if that's what it is, then that's what it is. So I will support the motion.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? I think this is a real opportunity for the Housing Board to simply provide answers that represent the reality. And I'm optimistic that the board will take this opportunity to be transparent and accountable. I'll also be supporting the motion. I think it's a good opportunity, and it's a good opportunity to contribute to a collaborative relationship with the partners that the board will be approaching, has approached, and will be potentially approaching for continued support and contributions. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. That motion is carried. All councillors voted in favor for the recorded vote. We will move to agenda item 7.1. My reports start on page 145 of the council package. I did put some highlights just regarding, I believe I spoke to this at our last council meeting as well, but I did attend several events at the Calgary Stampede on behalf of Wheatland County, and it's an excellent opportunity not just to celebrate our agricultural roots and proud Western heritage, but also it really is recognized as one of the most dynamic weeks of the year for investment attraction, strategic networking, and policy dialogue. From the Invest Alberta Investment Forum to the Partner Showcase and Alberta Investor Connect to the Government of Alberta reception hosted by Minister Dreeshen, to the ISP Crestview and Alberta Council events, it was a week full of powerful conversations where I had opportunities to meet with First Nations leadership, municipal and provincial colleagues, developers who have already made the commitment to build in Wheatland County, as well as investors who are actively making siting decisions from all over the globe. The Calgary Stampede is that rare opportunity where we welcome the world and have that opportunity in one place to meet with people from many different countries who are looking to invest in Alberta. I had the privilege of engaging with leaders from across sectors: agriculture, aviation, business, post-secondary education, tech, ports, rail, utilities, trade associations, and economic development groups like Invest Alberta, Invest in Canada, Calgary Economic Development, and Economic Development Lethbridge. There was also a fun de Havilland corporate team building event that Wheatland County hosted one of the stops for. They did an amazing race style event for their team, and it was really fun to highlight the county and what we're doing to support de Havilland Field and to meet some of their staff. For August, it was definitely a little bit of a quieter month, and I was very grateful to get away a couple of times. We did have a really fantastic event hosted by the Strathmore District Agricultural Society, where multiple government ministers and parliamentary secretaries attended, and as well as a number of industry representatives from across Wheatland County from a lot of different sectors. And we also got to meet our new MLA. Tara Sawyer was there as well. So that was an excellent opportunity. And then following that in the afternoon, I attended a meeting with de Havilland and multiple ministers and parliamentary secretaries as well. The rest of the month was somewhat uneventful, and I was grateful for a little bit of a break. And I will move acceptance of my reports as presented. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item. Councillor Kester.
Missed agenda item, is that on, sorry, that's part of the consent agenda, 5.12.
Yeah, you betcha.
Okay.
That was accepted already. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 7.2A, Deputy Reeves' report.
Thank you. Mine was hot off the presses this morning. My apologies for that. It's sitting before you. Just want to highlight Drumheller Solid Waste. We awarded an operation contract, and we also have the hauling contracts awards, and it's different providers from before. Extensive review on service levels, costs, the usual, and the board approved them. On August 13th, Reeve Link was away, and she asked me to attend a potential wind community barbecue in the Dallam area. It was really nice to go back to where we sat out in a field when it was really windy and cold, and they said, we're going to build all this to go actually seeing an operations building and meeting the staff, the local people that work there, and the community members and how it's actually built out. It's quite amazing. And then another one of the wind energy contractors was in the area too, and there was some funding that they had, and it was nice to see some local people saying, well, the funding should go here, and I guess they put something in the paper and nobody participated, and it kind of just happened right in front of me, and I was like, hey, that's really good. It went to the local area, that's where it should go. So no, it was great to go out there, and they had the executives from Toronto. They're all over Canada, Potentia, and a lot of these people have sat in offices and never seen it firsthand, so I guess they have a lottery for some of their staff members, and some of the accountants and whatnot get to come out to site and see why it costs so much to do X, Y, Z, and yeah, it was really, really good. Really good operation, very clean, very modern, so. Yeah. I'll move my report as presented. If there's any questions, please ask.
Any questions for Deputy Reeve Clausen? I'll call the question. Yep. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.2B, ratification of attendance at potential renewable or Wheatland Wind Community Barbecue.
Because it was a fair distance away, I'm asking for mileage at 176 kilometers and a part day per diem for that. I did have to get someone in to drive for me while I could go, but it was very important to go. I thought to represent our county, and yeah, so I asked for that.
Council's wishes.
I'll move to accept ratification. Sorry, just of mileage, or you want it?
Mileage and partial per diem, he said.
Partial per diem and mileage for Deputy Reeve Clausen's attendance at the Potentia Wheatland Wind Community Barbecue on August 13, 2025.
Any questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
I'm just curious, did the area councillor know about this?
I'm not sure, that would be up to the company.
The email chain I saw, no, it was to yourself, and then got forwarded to me because you couldn't be in attendance. So it's
Yeah,
up to them.
frequently when we've had events before, there's multiple invitations that go out. I'm not sure, it's always at the discretion of the host. Any other questions? I'll call the question. That motion is carried, and thank you to Deputy Reeve Clausen for attending. We'll move to agenda item 7.3, Division 1 Councillor Report.
My report starts on page 149 in the package. I'll just highlight a couple things. So WRC, we had a special meeting in July to discuss the proposal to join the Village of Standard and area community organizations in a solar energy project. So we heard more information from the consultant and representatives from the Village of Standard. However, our administrator, as well as our board chairman, voiced concerns about WRC participation and if it would result in savings to our utility ratepayers. We had a discussion about taking more time to review more information, but since the village is on a tight timeline to apply for the grant, the board voted to not participate at this time. And I don't think there's an opportunity to opt in anytime in the future. So unfortunately, this was lost, but I think in the interest of being very conservative with our utility ratepayers, we needed to make that decision. So that's where that went. And then in August, I just want to point out, I participated in an information webinar on ag plastic recycling. And so currently the programs in operation are considered pilot programs, so this could potentially formalize the process depending on what the survey finds. I did distribute that to as many producers and ranchers in Division 1 as I could think of, or I had emails addresses for, so hopefully we'll get a good response on what people would like to see for that. There's a couple of options that the government is sort of weighing which would be more beneficial, and and how to roll it out, things like that. So it's important for people to participate if they can. There's a link on my report to participate in that if anybody was interested. And then I just wanted to send a big thank you to the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce for the very successful parade that Councillors Eichert, Clausen, Bigger, and I were able to attend. It was a huge parade. We finished it and they were still sending more floats out, so a huge success for them. And also to the Strathmore Ag Society for the invitation to the chuck wagon races. While there, I had an opportunity to speak with Ag Society representatives from the WID, and as well MLA Sigurdsson was in the same booth for a period of time. So great opportunity to just talk about things like gopher control and on-farm slaughter, things like that. With WID, just the different initiatives that they're doing. So very valuable, and I appreciate that invitation very much. So I will move my report as presented, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions? And absolutely kudos on the parade. I apologize that I wasn't able to participate this year. We had a family wedding that I won't get into it, that I actually missed, but anyways, I was unable to join the parade due to some commitments with that. But I heard it was another, the second year in a row, they broke last year's records. It was another record-breaking parade. So, and a very successful Strathmore Stampede, and excellent that we had representatives that could participate and network there as well. So thank you. If there's no other questions, I will call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.4, Division 3 Councillor Report.
Yes, my report is July was on the server, but August didn't get in time. So I just want to, I did attend a open house for a data center company that's trying to, or looking at coming in to the Carsland area. It was well attended with the public. It was an open house come and go, so we were there at the beginning. But there was quite a few people there when I was there. And then we got to meet up again with the company at the ministerial brunch. Other than that, it was regular stuff. I forgot to put the parade down. You're lucky you weren't at the parade. It was the marathon, trying to keep up. I slept for quite a few hours after that. But it was a very good parade. So with that, I'll move my report as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions? I will call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.5, Division 4 Councillor Report.
I think most everything's been covered. I just want to touch base with, I want to thank Shannon for doing the heroic job of getting the candy for the parade. I mean, we were a hit again. It's amazing what you can bribe people. It's wonderful. And I'm just wondering if we should not send a formal thank you letter to the Ag Society for inviting us to the booth, because there was an awful lot of networking done there. Getting to meet the like the finance people from WID, and getting up close and personal with RJ. They were all interesting experiences, and so I guess once I pass my report, I will make a motion that we send a thank you letter to the Ag Society. So if there's no other questions, I will move my report as presented.
Any questions Sorry, Counselor Kester.
I think you clarified a question I had. I seen in the expense reports 3 bills at Dollar Store, I believe. They're all exactly the same. So
I think it was just
one
split
bill
amongst
really
the,
for candy for the parade.
One bill split 4 ways, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we stuck to our, allowable,
Yeah, no,
Candy
I
budget.
figured that. I didn't know when I seen so many.
yeah, maybe if
Now when I seen
administration
it
could
was
just
all
add
the
a
same
note
number.
that that was a shared expense amongst the 4 counselors, just so it's clear on the public reporting. Any other questions? I'll call the question. Counselor Eckert, you had a potential motion?
Yes, I'd like to direct administration to send a thank you note to the Strathmore Ag Society for hosting us for the Chuck Wagon races. It was an event well done, and we thank them for it
On behalf of council.
on behalf of council.
Any questions regarding the letter? Oh, I didn't even, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That motion is carried. My apologies, got a little ahead of myself. And now we have a second motion to consider a letter on behalf of council to the Strathmore District Agricultural Society, thanking them for the invitation to the Strathmore Stampede.
Should it say invitation and passes? Because those
If you
passes.
say invitation to the
Yeah,
Strathmore
yeah.
Stampede, it encompasses that. Any other questions? I'll call the question. Take your time. Any questions regarding the oh, sorry, I already called it. We'll vote.
Sorry, the motion just doesn't say who the letter is going to, but,
Strathmore District Agricultural Society.
very good.
And that motion is carried. I wonder if it might be prudent to send a letter to the Strathmore District Chamber of Commerce thanking them for successfully organizing the parade. Thoughts?
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we'll give Shanna a minute and the technology a minute. Oh, right, thank you. I had the old name in my head. Organization. Yeah. And thank them for organizing. It's a big undertaking.
like a voice in my head.
It's collaboration at its finest.
I have those.
It's thinking.
Technology will make our life easier, they said. We'll get rid of paper, they said.
So the motion is on our screens that council direct administration to send a thank you letter to the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce on behalf of Wheatland County Council to congratulate them on a successful parade and thank them for organizing. Any questions? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.6.
My report's on the server. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And if not, I'll move my report as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Kester? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 7.7.
My report's also on the server. Everything's been covered, so unless there's questions, I'll move my report as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Lowerson? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.11.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 159 of your agenda package is the CAO monthly report for July and August. As always, the Council Resolution Tracker is included in that report and starts on page 161. If there's any questions about this report or the Council Resolution Tracker, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the July and August 2025 Chief Administrative Officer report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the September 2nd, 2025 Council Resolution Tracker as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any discussion? I'll call the question.
Nothing coming out. I'll just
Try and close that dumb window.
Let's get it.
Oops.
It's the second time it comes up.
Minister Williams stand at the porn stash.
There it is.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
We all know you're the real brains of the outfit.
I'm old that I know that. I'm not sure you should know that.
That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.12.
Good morning, Council. Brian, again from Administration. On page 168 of your agenda package is the RFD for the 2025 Fall RMA Convention, meeting with Minister Williams, who is the new Minister of Municipal Affairs. So this is an interesting RFD as some council members will not be in attendance to this due to the council members not running again. Some may not be there as well as the election is coming up prior to the RMA convention. However, we did put the topics of discussion that administration thought might be prudent for the minister. And an interesting piece of information that we got from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs is that just this last week at a conference that I and General Manager Bullock attended, is that one thing that the council or the attendees do need to keep in mind is that Minister Dan Williams is a new Minister of Municipal Affairs who hasn't had this portfolio for long. So prior to him, Minister Rick McIver had this portfolio, and he had this portfolio on and off for a long time. So when discussing these matters with the new minister, just be of the understanding that, you know, he may not understand all of our local issues like Minister McIver did. And also, they also have a new ADM in place as well. So Brandy Cox, I believe she retired, and the new ADM is Jonah. Deputy Minister, sorry. So Jonah Mosen, and he joined in May 2025. So they're both very intelligent individuals. However, just they're both new in those positions. So just when we're council's having that conversation with them, just be mindful that they haven't been in this portfolio for long. They did go on a summer tour, meeting with some municipalities across the summer, but Wheatland County wasn't one of them. And that's just, I'm guessing, geographical issue that Minister Williams is, I think, a MLA of Peace River. So. Administration did put in some topics of discussion. We also put in the last topics of discussion that we did put forward to the previous Minister of Municipal Affairs. So at council's discretion of what you would like to add, assuming you would like to have you would like the new council to have a meeting with the minister. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
When I looked at this, the first thing that came to my mind was the police funding model. And exactly what you said, where service levels aren't measurable and costs are difficult to justify. The setup of their oversight board being one provincial body instead of having more local input, I think is something that we should have a dialogue with the minister about.
Any other suggested topics? Councillor Larson.
I would add secondary roads. It'd be nice to have another conversation about that within the county. I don't think we should do number 2 there, concerns regarding quasi-judicial bodies. I wouldn't support that.
Those were the topics that were already previously discussed at Spring 2024, that second one that you mentioned.
Just a question to administration. The Minister of Municipal Affairs, would he be the right person to talk about secondary roads, or would that be a Minister of Transportation?
Through the chair, you probably could talk to him about them for sure. I believe there's always, funding things with secondary roads as well. So you could definitely bring them up to him.
And I would definitely support that. Yep.
Municipal Affairs Ministry can be a good advocate for infrastructure funding for municipalities for sure.
Very good.
Councillor Kester.
I would put our bridge infrastructure ahead of secondary roads. It's not only just the infrastructure. There's some of those bridges could be culverts, and it's my understanding Alberta Environment doesn't like culverts. So I'm thinking we could have a talk, because the difference in cost between a culvert and a bridge is a lot. And I know, because that one bridge I've been waiting on for over 20 years, a lot of times there's not a drop of water in that thing, but nobody can drive across it. So I think that is a topic that's going to be pretty hot in the county coming years.
So we have 3 proposed topics. Are there any other topics anybody would like to propose? Perhaps a motion as drafted by administration with the inclusion of a police funding model, I don't think the order really matters. Secondary road funding and bridge infrastructure funding. Any other proposals? If we have consensus, that could be the motion. Any further discussion? I'll call the question.
Do we have a mover of that motion?
Oh. Sorry, I see Shanna put me, but I won't move it. Would somebody like to move that motion? Councillor Larson.
I'll move that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Now I'll call the question. Thank you, CAO Henderson. It's a good idea. That motion is carried. We'll move to 8.13.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian again from Administration. On page 172 of your agenda package is a follow-up to the August 19th, 2025 Public Presentation Committee meeting presentation by the Drumheller Area Health Foundation. And this was a request or a presentation that was done to the committee, and there was a request to have this put on the next council meeting as per the procedure outlined in the bylaw. So at that meeting, there was a request for the social media, or our social media, to amplify communications for the Drumheller Area Health Foundation. And then, and I think there was also a request for council to consider this prior to the final budget deliberations of the new council. If there's any questions about this report, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Kester.
Make a motion that council direct administration to amplify communications for the Drumheller Area Health Foundation and bring a report back to council prior to the final budget decisions for consideration.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.21.
Good morning, Council. Corey from Administration. Here to present the Corporate Financial Services Report for July and August 2025, found on page 175 of the Council Report. I don't have anything to really add to the report, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Any questions regarding the report? Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I move that council accept the Corporate and Financial Services Report for July and August 2025 as information.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.22, in-kind contributions policy.
Good morning, Council. Joel Chasson from Administration here. The next report is found on page 183 of the agenda package for in-kind contribution policy. Just a brief summary, this policy was presented at the prior Committee of the Whole meeting. The general feedback was positive with some recommendations or concerns, just to add some information around timelines within the policy itself. Administration has included the draft policy in the agenda package and identified the changes from the discussion as proposed in the general principles that's shown on the screen above. The green being addition and the red being subtraction. And those were the only changes made from the draft policy. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve the attached in-kind contributions policy 2.11.
Thank you, Councillor Reichert. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Question to administration. Is lunch here?
Yes, it is.
Let's digest the unaudited financial statements after lunch. We will break until 12:45 and reconvene then. Thank you, everybody. Afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order, back to order, and we will resume our agenda at agenda item 8.23.
Good afternoon, Council. Joel Chesson from Financial Services, here to walk through the Q2 financial statements. I'll just go down to and just briefly walk through each statement itself. There's a lot of figures and details here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So first schedule, the consolidated statement of operations. Again, there's a lot of numbers here, but council's probably most interested in the net surplus deficit before other items. What this represents in terms of the third column, the actual Q2 financial results, and the second column represents the budget from a Q2 basis instead of annual. So when you look at those two columns, it's a good representation kind of on the operational performance of the county by Q2. And you can see like the net surplus there, the actual is around 15.1 million compared to the budget of 11.6 million. And I've kind of mentioned this in prior quarterly reporting, especially around Q2, that net property tax revenue value, that tends to come down from the surplus shown there, just because it includes the Q3 and 4 school taxes that are still due to the province, and those get sent along during those periods, and so that brings the net revenue down. The expectation, if you consider that, as well as the designated industrial property requisition, which also goes, I think, in Q3, those will bring down the actual revenue pretty much right in line with the full year budget for taxes. In addition, for the expenditure side, I will hop back there. On the expenditure side, we're showing a total of $24.7 million in actual expenses versus the half-year budget of $27.7 million. And also just note, for some of these, there can be operating items that are maybe not in our capital threshold, so they're kind of one-time projects and things like that that are budgeted for here as well, that can be reflected as why there's an under-budget value there. In addition, for something that would be noteworthy is the budget for the Goldfinch interest for this year. We budgeted for a lot higher than what was realized, just because the debenture, as we stepped into it, we were able to gain some interest savings on that throughout the year as well. Just instead of taking the full loan up front, we've kind of stepped that up over time, and as the project has been requiring cash draws, and so that's been one of the variances in terms of the expenditure side of things, a positive variance. As usual, we include a lot of detailed notes for the higher level items on each schedule. If we skip to the essentially the balance sheet status from June of last year, or end of June last year, to June of this year, I'll just point out a couple things. The long-term debt, you can see that jumps up. Again, that's just due to the Goldfinch loan, as that's been ramped up with that project, increases the debt value from that year to year. And similarly with that, the deferred revenue as well increases. That's just strictly due to cost contributions from the private entities that are part of that Goldfinch project. And so the cash that they pay up front, it's just on an accounting standard, it's realized as a liability until the project is completed, and then it drops off after that. So those are the two large increases on the liability side of things. And then just as with other quarters, we also supply the list of each capital project, including details about the percent complete, the status, the year-to-date spending versus the budget. If there's any instances where there's been a project that's been approved post-final budget, we usually keep the resolution note in here just for reference of where that approval was obtained from, along with the other details on the project. You can see for the Q2, overall, we're showing about $10.7 million spending year to date. I'll back out a little bit so we can see the headers. Sorry, it's a lot of data in one table. So each project's available there. And then in addition, we also provided the reserves balances as of Q2 as well in the final schedule for each designated reserve. Just a quick refresh as the undesignated value at the end of 2024 audit was around $20 million as well. And that gets updated typically during the audit, as well as some of the balances in the designated reserves. That concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the comprehensive reporting, and I think the way it was structured, like with the explanations, is really helpful for us to understand where we're at and the rationale for the financial position that we're in. Does anybody have any questions about the report? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the unaudited financial statements as of June 30th, 2025 as information.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 8.31, Community and Development Services Report.
Good afternoon, Council. Sherry Bars with Administration to present the July and August 2025 Community and Development Services Report found on page 201 of the agenda package. I don't have anything further to add at this time and am available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from Council? Just want to celebrate its exciting news that Glacian and Carsland multi-use pathways are complete. And I think it's really valuable, the plan to provide a grant writing workshop for the community nonprofit organizations. That can be an invaluable support for those entities. Council's wishes. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'll make the motion that council accepts the July and August 2025 Community and Development Services Report as information.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.32, approval of fire apparatus for Standard Rural Fire.
Good afternoon, Sherry Bars again with Administration to present a request from the Standard Rural Fire Association to replace their existing 2008 bush buggy. The report's found on page 212 of the agenda package. At the August 7th Fire Capital Meeting, an update was provided on the 20-year capital replacement plan, along with discussion regarding Standard's request to replace their 2008 bush buggy. This truck was originally scheduled for replacement in 2028. However, after discussions with Fort Garry Fire Trucks, Standard Fire was informed that the order could be fast-tracked for delivery in 2026. Given current market conditions, postponing the purchase would likely result in a longer delivery time and higher costs. The proposed replacement is a Fort Garry Ranger bush buggy, estimated at about $650,000 before GST. Key benefits of the new apparatus is that this one is built on a 3-ton chassis, giving it a longer service life than their current 1-ton truck. It will have a larger water tank, and it's also designed to be operated by a single person rather than two, which was key for working in wildfires. And then the other plus was it could be delivered by the summer of 2026. After reviewing the specifications and cost estimates, the committee passed a motion approving the purchase with a total budget of up to $750,000 to cover contingencies. As per the county's fire association funding policy, the county contributes 60% towards apparatus purchases. This means the county's contribution will be between $389,000 at the estimated cost and up to $450,000 if the full contingency is used. In summary, the committee approved the advancing this replacement to secure availability, manage costs, and ensure Standard Fire has the right equipment in place. To support this purchase, administration recommends that council approve the Fire Capital Committee's request to replace the Standard Fire Association's 2008 bush buggy. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? We'll go to Councillor LaPrice and Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I was just going to make the motion. I'll make the motion and then you can ask a question if you had. I move that council approves allocating up to $450,000 representing the county's 60% share for the purchase cost for a new bush buggy for the Standard Rural Fire Association to be included in the 2026 Wheatland County operating budget. The final contribution will be based on the confirmed purchase price and funded through the Fire Capital Reserve as per Fire Association Funding Policy 12.0.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I just have a question. We've gone up to a larger tank and a very expensive piece of equipment. And I've seen other rural firefighters have, they've gone to like the UTV type, so it's more nimble. Problem with when you get with these bigger units and it can get stuck really easily because of the weight on them. That's just my concern. Like it's getting to be a bigger chassis. It'll end up getting stuck somewhere. And that's just, I hope they considered all that. I'm sure they did, but it just seems very expensive for 20 years ago, a bush buggy was an old public works truck, 4-wheel drive with a tank in the back that was miled out, and because they get the tar beat out of them because they go across the field, they go across everything, go through fences. They're chasing the fire. That's the only thing I like, and that's what they're built for.
Through the council, they did talk a little more about the specific bush buggy. The reason it is a military vehicle that is now being designed for civilian use, and that's one of the reasons it was being expedited, is that this is the first one going into civilian use for firefighting purposes. And they were able to see it. It is able to go out in the field, and because these take a beating when they're out in the field, and the larger water tank was also advantageous for them for not having to get refueling water. And the biggest benefit to it, that it could be operated by one man when they're rural volunteers the other one requires 2 men to operate the vehicle and the fire suppression.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.3. Oh, yes, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Larson.
I'll move that council authorizes that the proceeds from the trade-in or sale of the current 2008 bush buggy be distributed as follows. 50% to Wheatland County Fire Capital Reserve, and 50% to the Standard Rural Fire Association.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 8.33, Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship.
Good afternoon, Sherry Bars again. On behalf of Dave Rhymes to present the 2025 Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship. The report's found on page 216 of the agenda package. The Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship supports students in Wheatland County and area schools by awarding at least one university or college scholarship each year. The program is designed to recognize and reward high-achieving students pursuing studies in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Each scholarship provides up to $2,000 annually with a total annual fund of $4,000 available. For 2025, the program was promoted through the county's website, social media channels, with an application deadline of July 31st. Applications were carefully reviewed by representatives of Wheatland Wind and County Administration. From this process, we are pleased to recommend awarding $2,000 scholarship to Hayes Armstrong, an outstanding student pursuing post-secondary studies in agricultural biotechnology. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? Council's wishes.
Move the council approve the Wheatland Wind Community Benefit Scholarship Award for $2,000 to Hayes Armstrong.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any discussion? It's an exciting day. If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. Congratulations to Hayes. That's very exciting. We'll move to agenda item 8.41, Transportation and Agriculture Report.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock reporting on the August Transportation and Agriculture Department report. The report begins on page 219 of Council's agenda, and I am here for any questions Council may have.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report?
Just a question on page 221, utility infrastructure planning. And it says that municipal water, wastewater, SEMA is going to have a draft expected by August 29th, and yet the next down is Highway 1 and Cheadle groundwater supply has been put off, and the drilling program is going to be put. So how can you have one if you don't know what you got? So how do you? That's cart and the horse kind of thing, right? So.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I believe that August 29th date was needed to be updated. I think one of those got updated and the other one didn't. So, but we can. I think we have. Do we have a new date? We'll get a new date of when that report is expected. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Larson.
So how is the MRO project working? Is it proving to be an effective alternative?
Through the Reeve, so far what we're finding it is, we have done some cost analysis. It's not ready to come out, but in terms of calcium dust control versus MRO, fundamentally MRO you have to consider is a form of dust control, just a little bit nicer form of dust control. It's not asphalt, it's not seal coat. And so I guess when we think about it, we do think of it as dust control. And so when we run our comparisons, we do it between calcium dust control, what we're doing in MRO in terms of cost savings and in terms of the long term. Our operations manager is present. He might be able to add a little bit more information to that if wanted. But it is something that we're keeping our eye on in terms of the cost efficiencies There is I would say, a community benefit to it as well. People do tend to like the MRO better. It works better during the dry seasons. Calcium does require moisture to operate, as council would know. And so there is some benefit there as well with the MRO.
So durability overall is better, right? Is that a fair statement?
They're different products. Yeah, it would last longer. The calcium would have to get applied every year, and perhaps even multiple times a year, and then it does lose its effect when it's dry. So, and the MRO, one nice thing about it is you can rework it. So once it's laid, the cost of putting it down and reworking it in future years could be less. But again, that's something that we're keeping our eye on.
You haven't had to rework any yet, though?
Some we have, yep, certainly, yep.
Does it work up good? I keep looking over there in case he wants to say something.
Maybe if it's amenable to the chair, we can invite.
Yeah, I'd like to see, because it looks like such a good option, but I don't know the ins and outs of how it actually works.
Sure.
Hello, Council. Cody Zimmerman with Administration. So to answer your question, we have definitely reworked some locations. We find that some of the intersections and things where we get a lot more traffic and the start and stopping does kind of washboard up and work up a bit. But we can go and grind those up and relay them typically in a half a day, right? It's very, very minimal work to redo it and repack it down, and it's good to go again for another year, essentially, right? So there's a couple roads that are higher traffic volume where we've had some issues with it breaking up on the shoulders and whatnot, but again, we're kind of, those are more roads that have had a single lift. Once you get a second lift on it, it usually holds up a lot better and a lot longer. 261 has been, I think, 4 years that's been sitting, so it's been quite well. There's just the one intersection we kind of do annually, and again, it's because of that start and stop traffic. So that's where it doesn't like corners and it doesn't like intersections, right? But otherwise, it holds up really nice, I find. Higher volumes, I think, is where the issues kind of lie. When you're getting closer to that 400 car a day mark, and like we see on 245, it starts to struggle. But I think for the lower volumes, when you're in that 200 to 300 range, I think is kind of the sweet spot for it that we've been seeing, where it works really, really well and is the most cost effective. Once you start pushing closer to 400, you're better off to go to a pavement just because of straight traffic volumes.
So either way, though, it's much better than calcium chloride on high traffic areas too, though, right?
Through the chair, you definitely get a lot less potholing and that kind of thing, because even with calcium, it does compact and hardens up, but you will get potholing eventually with it, and you have to work it and respray it, and basically all the points that Brad had touched on with regards to drying up, right? We don't get out there till the spring to apply our calcium, so you're kind of May to June, whereas this is in effect all year round. So, I mean, when it comes to winter, you're plowing the gravel or you're plowing the MRO, so those kind of costs kind of balance out overall. But really, it's that spring and that fall where you're getting that extra life out of the product that you don't get with the calcium, and you don't have to go and redo it every single year, so it frees up crews to do other things. So it's hard to weigh those costs because of the time saved with the crew doing other things versus that, and it's quite challenging to cost it all out, but we do find it to be quite effective on those. Like I said, that kind of 200 to 300 vehicle range seems to be the sweet spot for it. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions regarding the report? And thank you for that information. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the August 2025 Transportation and Agriculture Department report as information.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to our final agenda item of the day, 8.42, Administration Building Solar Array Financial Report. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. Jose from Administration here to present the Administration Building Solar Array Financial Report. So as per County Resolution CM 2025-08-28, this is a financial report on the county's solar array, including an estimated payback period based on the latest data. In October 2016, the county installed 215 solar panels on the administration building, creating a 60.2 kilowatt capacity system. The total installation cost was $118,790, of which $86,002 was paid by Wheatland County after accounting for a $32,788 AMSP grant. Since installation, the system has produced a total of 607.8 megawatt hours of electricity, averaging approximately 66.3 megawatt hours annually. Based on the updated forecasted expenses and energy generation cost savings, the county's payback period is currently estimated at 27 years, with full payback anticipated by 2043. For the public, it is important to keep the following considerations in mind when reviewing the county's solar panel payback calculator. The first of those being electricity costs. Municipalities benefit from lower electricity rates compared to households, which effectively increases the payback period compared to that of a residential system. The other one is rate switching. The calculation put together does not account for rate switching, whereby customers take 25-year power warranty, which guarantees the amount of power that the panels produce, and that expires in 2041. And I'm here for any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions?
Have you been able to graph, like, they've been on basically 10 years now, they've been on the building about 10 years now. Have you been able to graph if are they as efficient now as they were 10 years ago? Is there like a decline in efficiency on the photocells themselves? Is there any way you can, was that part of the study?
Through the chair, yes, yeah, they are slightly less efficient than when they were first installed, but they're still within the guarantee, the warranty.
So, and then this payback that's gonna, let me see. The payback of 27 years, that's only what the county put in, the 87,000 the county put in. It doesn't account for the other $30,000 that taxpayers from elsewhere in Alberta put into it? Like that's not, like the payback's not for the whole $110,000 or whatever that is.
Through the
Just
chair.
for the money we put into it.
That's correct, yes.
Do I have any other questions?
I do think that's just an important point to be made, is that that's to recover the costs for the county specifically, but that there were the additional $32,788 that were paid by other taxpayers. So still even longer to recover that full cost.
And I'm just be interested, and Councillor Kester might have, do you remember what they said the payback was going to be when, because we can only go by the information that we're given. And we don't assume anybody's going to go in there and tell us bald-faced lies. So they say the payback in 2016 was going to be 10, 12, 15 years. I don't know. Is there any way we can find that out just for information? I know I don't have that, I can't go back into the county stuff for that, but I was wondering if we could do that.
Yeah, there was an extended payback period. There was also the advantage of cheaper power too. So I don't know how it's working out, but that was part of the discussion.
Yeah, just that we sit at a table and we're told information and we sort of have to believe that information. So it'd be interesting to see what the salesman of the day was saying that this was going to be, right? Like, because if they said, well, you do this, you spend $88,000, the payback's going to be in 2025, and we find out now that it's, 17 years further down the line. That'd be interesting, because I think there's probably a correlation to what happens today to what people tell you because we have a tendency as human beings to forget about what was said in the past. And, so I'm just wondering if can I direct administration to see if they can find, 2016 shouldn't be that long ago. There should be a package on the agenda on what was said.
Yeah, through the chair, you can make any resolution you want. Yeah, for sure. If you want to direct us to do that, just make that motion.
Well, I just think it would be really good information to have to find out what they said back then and what we now know for a certainty what is happening.
Sorry, so I have Mike, my facilities foreman, who recalls 20 years. Yeah, they had told us 20 years.
Any other questions regarding the report? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accepts the solar array financial report as information.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. And that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda, and meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.